I'm Matthew,
I'm Chandler.
and today we're gonna be bringing you the Pac-12.
Okay, so the first team we're going to talk about in the South is Arizona Wildcats. And they actually have a few new coaches this year on staff. They actually have former NFL standout DeMarco Murray. He is actually going to be their running backs coach this year. And they have ex-NFL offensive lineman Kyle DeVan, which now coaches the offensive line for Arizona. Key returning players, they have their, once star quarterback. He was very good in 2017 and then kind of fell off last year, which really killed their season. They had high predictions and high hope coming into last season. Khalil Tate, so he's back again this year and he's going to look to, amp it up again. He decided not to run as much as he did in 2017. 2017, I mean, the man was doing it all with his legs. Last year, trying to be more of a pro-style quarterback, and that just doesn't fit him. He needs to start using his legs again and start taking off and being the athletic quarterback that he is.
I think that was more Kevin Sumlin's choice, and he needs to let the leash go. He needs to let him run. He's got a Mustang back there. He needs to let him wild.
And then running back J.J. Taylor. He's back this year. And then they got Cedric Peterson, wide receiver. Cody Crescent, which is a tackle. And then they got Josh McConley, which is a center position. Defensively, they actually have quite a bit returning on defense this year. Starting out with defensive line, they got J.B. Brown. And then their another defensive lineman is Justin Belknap. And then their pass rusher, which he's known, people think he's going to break out this year, and he's basically a potential star guy you need to watch out for in the Pac-12 this year, is Jalen Harrison. And then the linebacker who led the team with 119 tackles, 21.5 tackles for loss last year, Colin Schooler. He's one of the better linebackers. They say that they remind him of Scooby Wright, which was there about 4 or 5 years ago, I believe. He didn't really do anything in the NFL, but they say Colin Schooler reminds him of that type of linebacker. And then another linebacker that's very, very talented is Tony Fields. He had 89 tackles last year, and he's supposed to really produce this year for this team. And then they have a fifth-year senior cornerback that's coming back, Jace Whittaker, so he's supposed to be a very good player also. And then they have one other guy in the secondary that's coming back and supposed to have a really good impact, Lorenzo Burns. This will be his 4th year in the program. Key player losses, they don't really have much on defense. Like I said, a lot of the defensive players are coming back this year. But what happened was Arizona basically lost all the wide receivers. They're decimated on the wide receiver department, which is really bad for Khalil Tate since he's hoping to have that bounce back year, like I was saying. So the 4 wide receivers, they lost 3 of them were due because they ran out of eligibility, and one of the players was actually dismissed from the team. So the first wide receiver was Sean Poindexter, which he ran out of his eligibility. And the second one was Sean Brown, same thing with him. And then Tony Ellison, same thing with him. And then the next guy who was actually kicked off the team was Devon Cooper. Recruiting-wise, they've done pretty well. I mean, not like super well, but average. They're 50th overall for the last 5 years. And returning production, they're number 11 in the entire country. Offensively, they were decent last year, middle of the pack, 48th in the country with 31.3 points per game. Defensively, they kind of struggled, 91 in the country with giving up 32.1 points per game. And then last year's record, well, they were at the time before last year, they were projected to compete for the Pac-12 South title, and that did not happen at all. They didn't make a bowl game last year. They went 5-7 and 4-5 in the Pac-12. And this year, I do expect them to make a bowl game. Right now, I'm saying they'll go 7-5. So I have them going 7-5, and I have them winning the first game against Hawaii, which even though that could be a tough game, like I said earlier, I forget who else playing Hawaii. That's Oregon State, right? Yeah, Oregon State. And then I have them win the second game, too, against Northern Arizona, so that should be a cakewalk. And then they have a very interesting game. If you like offense, you might want to tune in for this one, Texas Tech versus Arizona. Yeah. That's week 3, so that's going to be a very good football game. And you know what? I'm going to give Arizona the benefit of the doubt and say, you know what? I'll give them that victory, too. And then they get UCLA at home. I have them losing that game, so that's their first loss right there. And then I have winning next week against Colorado because I don't think Colorado's going to do anything this year. And then I have Arizona losing to Washington, so they'll be 4-2 at that point. And then after that, it gets real bad. I mean, the competition gets really good. After that, they go on the road and play USC. I don't think they'll win that game, but we'll see what happens. So I have them at 4-3 at that point. And then I have them losing to Stanford, so that brings them down to 4-4. Next week they get Oregon State. They should win that game, so they'll bump their record up back to 5-4. They play Oregon the week after that, so they'll be 5-5. And then I actually have them having an upset win against Utah. I have them beating Utah, which brings them to 6-5, and I believe they'll beat their rivals Arizona State finally on the road and finish 7-5.
I'm not that much different. I have one game less than he has them. 6-6 wins versus Hawaii, Northern Arizona, UCLA, Colorado State. I kind of have them in the same boat as Arizona State, and UCLA on this side of the conference. I think they can all be 4-8 to 7-5 type teams. I don't think they're good teams, but I don't think they're bad teams either. I think they're just average football teams. But I have them at 6-6, making a bowl game.
Okay, the second team we want to talk about is Arizona State, and this is going to be the second year for Herm Edwards. And the issue last year was they had the youngest defense in Division I. So they're basically, the whole defense is coming back. They're supposed to make a huge leap in defense, which could basically, turn Arizona State into a contender in the Pac-12 South. So it's a very interesting team that I think has a chance to really surprise people this year. So the key returning players, they got a running back coming back, Enoy Benjamin. He's basically the number one guy. And then quarterback, they got Dylan Sterling Cool. So they actually, they lost their quarterback last year. Quarterback that did it all for them, Manny Wilkins. So he's gone. So we'll see what this kid can do. He has some upside to him. So we'll see what it does at the end of the season. Wide receivers, they have quite a bit of wide receivers coming back. They got Frank Derby, which was one of the best deep ball threats in the entire Pac-12, and he's supposed to have a very good year this year also. And then they got Kyle Williams, who's been there for quite a long time now. He's a senior, and in his career there, he has over 100 catches. And then they have the senior, which was their center. He was second team All Pac-12 last year, so he's looking to build off that season, and his name is Cool Cabral, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And this is what makes Arizona State, besides that defense basically all coming back, they have 5 seniors on the offensive line. 5 seniors. So the offensive line is supposed to be very good this year. And that's a reason to think, wow, this team, who knows, they could come out and surprise everyone and take the Pac-12 South this year. Key return players in defense, like I said, they basically have everybody back. I'll just name a few of their more important players that are back. Their linebacker, Merlin Robinson, top tackler in Pac-12 Defensive Freshman of the Year, so he's back this year, supposed to have another great year. And then they got Darren Butler, who was the top tackler last year. He's also a linebacker. And then Tyler Johnson, he had a somewhat okay year last year, but a lot of people think he has the most potential to be an NFL player, so he's supposed to have a lot of upside to him. And then basically what they have a few, decent cornerbacks. Well, actually one very good cornerback. His name is Chase Lucas, and a lot of people think he will be drafted either in the first or second day of the NFL draft coming up. After this year, he will be eligible for the NFL draft, and people believe he will declare. So he's supposed to be a very big player for the secondary. And then another player in the secondary, Osari Crosswell, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He's a safety, and they also think he has potential to either be a first or second day NFL type player. So a lot of great things coming back for Arizona State on defense. They did struggle last year, mainly because they were just so young. Key player losses, like I said, they lost their QB, Manny Wilkins, so that's a big loss right there. He did a lot for them last year. And then they lost a very good wide receiver, and then N'Keal Harris, And then defense, they lost their nose tackle, Rennell Reen, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Recruiting, they've done great in recruiting. They've been number 28 in the country for the last 5 years, and returning productions number 14 in the entire country. So Arizona State, basically they're right on track. You give Herm Edwards, in my opinion, a couple more years, and I think this team could take over the Pac-12 South. Offensive rank, they were number 53 in the country last year. They scored 29.9 points per game. Defensively, they were 68 in the country. So, for a young defense, 68 in the country really isn't that bad. They gave up 25.1 points per game. And last year, they finished 7-6. They went 7-5 in the regular season. They ended up losing the bowl game. I believe it was Fresno State. Not 100% sure on that, but I believe it was Fresno State. And they went 5-4 in Pac-12 play. This year, I have them actually basically doing the same thing they went last year, which is 7-5 and 5-4 in the Pac-12. Even though I think they are going to be a much improved team, but they have a hard schedule than they do last year. The first 2 games should be easy wins. They get Kent State at home, and then they get Sacramento State at home, so they should start the season 2-0. But week 3, they go on the road and play Michigan State, and I think this will be a Michigan State team that's going to be much improved, and I think Michigan State should pull away with that.
And they're going to be motivated because they lost Arizona State last year also.
Yeah, and I think Brian Lewerke will have a much better year than he did last year. Because if I remember correctly, he cost them that game. I remember watching that game last year, and he was terrible in the fourth quarter for Michigan State.
I don't know if it was that point in the season, but I know he had something torn in his shoulder, so I don't know when that happened, but I know that's why he was so bad last year.
And then I have them winning the next week against Colorado. I don't think Colorado's really much of a team. And then I have them actually beating Cal the next week. So you look at that, they're sitting at 5-1. At that point, they're probably ranked. But after they get to that ranking, which I believe they will make the top 25 at that point, it gets very tough. They get Washington State at home, which I don't see them prevailing. And then they go on the road and they have to play Utah, which I also don't see them winning that game. And then I do have them winning against UCLA. So that puts them at 6-3 at that point. But I have them actually losing at home against USC. So after that game against Oregon State, that'll put them at 7-3. And then they'll lose the next game to Oregon. And then unfortunately, they'll end their season with losing to the rival Arizona, which will finish the season at 7-5.
I'm at 5-7, so the opposite of that. Obviously, he did more research on this side of the conference than I did, but I didn't realize they had 5 offensive linemen returning, so that's a big deal. But I did realize they were losing Manny Wilkins and N'Keal Harry, and I thought those were two pretty big losses on offense for a program like Arizona State to sustain. So I'm at 5-7 with wins at Kent State, Sac State, Colorado, California, and Oregon State. Pretty much, you beat up the teams you're supposed to beat. They could be 7-5. I don't see any problem with that. Their schedule is not very difficult. But I'm at 5-7.
Okay, so our next team in Colorado, Buffaloes. A couple years ago, I mean, this team was on the rise. They were making noise, had a 10-win season. But after last year, where they started the season 5-0, I believe, and then they ended up, they started the season, I believe, 5-0, ended up losing the last 7 games in the season, didn't even make a bowl game. So they ended up getting a new coach this year. His name is Mel Tucker. And he was actually a former defensive coordinator for Georgia and Alabama, so this man is very defensively minded coach. So he hopes to get them back to having a very good defense this year. They have a lot of key returning players, actually. They have the quarterback, Steven Montez, and he has a compiled record of 12-15 as a quarterback. Now, a wide receiver. This is where this team is amazingly good. I mean, this team has an amazingly great wide receiver core, so their offense does have a chance to really shine this year. Laviska Shenault Jr., who was basically a Heisman candidate last year, halfway through the season until he got injured. He's actually back, and he's supposed to have another great year this year. And then the other wide receivers that are very good, not as good as him, but also just very good wide receivers. They got K.D. Nixon, who had 52 catches and 636 yards last year. And then Tony Brown, which is kind of like a do-it-all wide receiver. I mean, he doesn't really make the flashy plays, but he'll go out there, land a block here and there, do stuff like that. He's a senior this year, so he has good leadership for these wide receivers. And then running back situation, this is where Colorado doesn't really have anything at the running back spot. Their running back, the projected star this year, only has 11 career attempts, and he's a junior, so he really hasn't had much chances in his career. Alex Fanat, I believe is how you say his name. And then they have two offensive linemen coming back. They have William Sherman, which is a tackle, and then they have Kobe Purcell, which he started every game last year at center. Defensively, they have about 5 or 6 really key players coming back this year. They have Nate Landman, which he's a linebacker, and he's known to be a very hard hitter. He basically covers the field, and he loves to punish people, basically. That's what he likes to do, so he's their main linebacker. And they have outside linebacker, which is Carson Wells. And then defensive line, they have Terrence Lang. And 9 of 11 scholarship linemen have never played a snap at Colorado, and 6 have never played in a college football game. So very inexperienced at the defensive line position, so that's definitely going to hurt Colorado this year. And then they have Devon Taylor, he plays safety. He's very fast and has NFL-type talent, so he definitely has a lot of upside to him. And then cornerbacks, they have Chris Miller, and then they have Delrick Abram Jr. So that's basically the whole secondary right there. Well, the main secondary players. Key player losses, offensively, they're not really losing much. Like I said, they probably have one of the better wide receiver cores in the entire Pac-12. So they do have a chance to do very well through the air. Defensively, they lost a lot of corners, actually. Lost 4 corners to transfer, but not really any big losses. A lot of these players, even though they were named cornerback position, played basically just special teams and stuff like that. So not a whole lot, but still they lost a lot of depth for that position. And one of the main cornerbacks that they did lose out before. The guy that actually did play cornerback position, actually, I believe, started all 15 games last year for him, is Dante Wigler. So he was one of the main guys that they did lose. But the other three really weren't important players for this team. Recruiting wise, they did pretty well. I mean, middle of the pack, number 54 in the country for the last 5 years, and returning production, the number 63. So, I mean, nothing too bad, but nothing amazing also. Offensively, they finished 89th in the country last year with 27.1 points per game. Defensively, 53rd in the country, giving up 27.3 points per game. Last year they went 5-7, 2-7 in the Pac-12. Like I said, they came out with that great start. Everyone thought, heck, here we go again. Colorado's going to have another great year, back-to-back years. They went 5-0 and then ended up losing the last 7 games. This year, I have them going 4-8. And let's go through the schedule now. The first game, of course, Colorado State. They usually start out with Colorado State, the rivalry. Colorado's been Colorado State the last 4 years, and I believe they'll win that game also, so they'll start the season 1-0. And then they get Nebraska the following week, and this is a much improved, well, you could say overhyped Nebraska team. We'll see what happens this year, but it's supposed to be a lot better Nebraska team, so I believe Nebraska will win that game. Nebraska's I am an Ohio State fan, what can I say? And then the next week after that, they play a pretty good Air Force team. That game is at Colorado, so that could be a very tricky game. I'm going to give Colorado the benefit of the doubt, but there's a good chance they can lose that game right there. So that puts them at 2-1, and then the following week they go on the road and play Arizona State. I believe Arizona State will win that game. And then I have them, wow, now that I start looking at the schedule again, I don't know how I came up with a 4-8 record. I don't know what I was doing, maybe a little day drinking, I'm not really sure. Something happened here, people, so I'm starting to look at that schedule, and I must have thought, of course, Colorado State, Air Force is that 2 wins right there. But I started looking through the rest of it, and I'm not seeing many opportunities for wins.
He was thinking Mel Tucker was Nick Saban.
Maybe I was. Maybe I thought he was going to do the old turnaround real fast, but I don't know what I was thinking. But you know what? I'll say, who knows? Maybe they'll beat UCLA, or they'll beat one of the Arizona teams. So, you know, I'm going to change my prediction and say 3-9. That's embarrassing, I know, but it is what it is.
I have him at 2-10. So when he said 4-8, I looked at the schedule, looked at him. I wasn't really sure how they got there.
I don't know what happened there.
I mean, they'll beat Arizona State, or they'll beat Air Force, not Arizona. They'll beat Air Force, and I also have them beating Colorado State. So I have them going 2-0 to start out, and then, or no, actually 2-1 because they have Nebraska in between there, and I think Nebraska is going to pay back the favor. You know, Colorado beat them on Nebraska's home field. I think Nebraska will beat Colorado on their home field. I just don't think this team's going to be very good. Like you said, on defense, you can't have that much inexperience and be that good. And defense with a first-year head coach, I just don't see it. 2-10.
Okay, so the next team we're going to talk about is a really intriguing team, but unfortunately for UCLA, they have one of the hardest schedules in the entire country. The non-conference schedule is no joke either. They got second-year coach Chip Kelly. He's looking to get that turnaround going. Last year they struggled and went 3-9, but they had to start to show a little progression at the end of the season. Even though they weren't really winning games, they started to play better and look better instead of getting blown out like they did earlier in the season. Key returning players, they have their quarterback who made 7 starts last year before he got injured and had 57.7 completion percentage, Dorian Thomas-Robertson. He's back this year. And then running back, they had a very good running back last year, Joshua Kelly. He had 1,243 yards rushing, so he's back and looking to build on the season he had last year. And then probably the best wide receiver is Theo Howard. He had 677 yards receiving last year, and he's back. And then their center position is, wow, I guess his name's Boss. That's a weird name, but kind of a cool name at the same time. Boss Tagaloa, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. And then their tight end is Jordan Wilson, which is, they actually have another tight end also, but I believe Jordan Wilson will be the better of the 2 tight ends coming back this year. Defensively, they have a lot of cornerbacks coming back, a lot of secondary players. The first one I'm going to pronounce is Darnay Holmes. He's coming back this year. And then they have Quentin Lake, which is also another cornerback. And then Elijah Gates. So those are 3 really good position players for them that are really going to help the secondary. They have a linebacker who is actually, he's a senior this year, but he was a former 5-star recruit, which really hasn't really panned out much. But last year he had 46 tackles, and they're hoping that he can have another great year like that. His name is Keyshawn Lucifer South.
No, I'm just saying Lucifer, same.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting name. And then you have Josh Woods, who's also a linebacker. He missed all of 2018, so he's looking to have a bounce back year, especially after being injured the entire season. And then a really, really good player for them is their nose tackle, defense lineman, Antonio Mafia is how you pronounce his name. So he's supposed to be a very good player for them and really stop up the run, hopefully. Key player losses, they lost one of the better tight ends in the entire Pac-12. His name's Caleb Wilson. And then defensively, they actually lost their leading tackler last year, Adorius Pickett. Recruiting, they've done very well recruiting. Overall, the last 5 years, they've been number 21 in the country. And returning production, they have number 16 in the entire country. Offensively, they were 89 last year with 24.6 points per game. And defensively, they really struggled. 102 in the entire country, giving up 34.1 points per game. I think I read something that said in all 12 games that they played, there was only 3 games where they held their opponents under 30 points. So you're not going to win too many games when you're giving up 30-plus points every single week almost. Last year, they went 3-9. All 3 wins actually came in the Pac-12. They went 3-6 in the Pac-12. And this year, I believe they will make a bowl game. I have them going 6-6, even though they do have a tough schedule. Their first game is actually against the school that I actually go to, UC. So, I mean, sorry, UCLA, but I can't give you the win. I can't look bad for my own college. I'm actually probably going to go to that game. And that game's at Cincinnati. I had Cincinnati winning that game. Cincinnati actually won 11 games last year, so they might do it again. We'll see what happens. And then I have UCLA winning the next week against San Diego State. And I remember Matt telling me a couple weeks ago the man somehow believing UCLA is going to pull this upset against Oklahoma. I'm not buying it. I have them losing that ball game also. We'll see what happens. Who knows? So I have them 1-2 at that point. And then they go on the road and they actually have to get Washington State. So, I mean, the schedule doesn't really get much easier for this team, unfortunately. I believe they'll lose that game too. So they're sitting at 1-3, but then they'll bounce back. They'll beat Arizona on the road, and then they'll beat Oregon State at home. So they'll be sitting at 500, 3-3. And then I believe they'll lose to Stanford. So they'll be 3-4 at that point. They'll beat Arizona State the next week, which will sit at 4-4. They'll beat Colorado, which will give them that 5-4 record. So after that, they basically have 3 games left to try to get that last one and make the bowl game. I believe they'll lose the following week to Utah, which, again, they go right back to 500 at 5-5. Then they'll lose to USC the next week in their rivalry game, which puts them at 5-6. And they'll beat Cal last week to finish the season at 6-6. And Chip Kelly in the second season will make a bowl game.
I'm at 6-6 as well. I just believe Chip Kelly will make improvements to this team, and I actually think they have decent skill position players, and that's what you really need in a Chip Kelly offense. Fast, key position players, and I think Dorian Thompson-Robinson is a decent quarterback from what I watched. I have wins at versus San Diego State, Washington State, Oregon State, Arizona State, Colorado, and Cal. So pretty much there's no upsets there other than if you want to consider Washington State an upset. I don't consider that an upset at this time this year. Last year it would have been, but not this year. I only said the thing about Oklahoma because I'm not sure about Jalen Hurts. Everyone's very positive about that. But the thing is, people don't realize their defense has been terrible the last 2 years at Oklahoma. And you've had 2 all-time great quarterbacks in college football history in Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield. So if Jalen Hurts takes a step down from that and their defense stays the same, UCLA played them really tough last year, actually, that first half. If they can just do that for a full game and it's at home, you have a chance to beat them. So I have them at 6-6, and I don't think they'll beat Oklahoma, but there's a chance.
Okay, so the next team I want to talk about is, I mean, it's about as talented as any team in the Pac-12, USC. I mean, they always have talent. It's USC for crying out loud. They do have a new offense coordinator. His name is Graham Harrell. He's from North Texas, actually, and he's actually a big follower of Mike Leach, so he likes to do the air raid offense.
He played under him at Texas Tech.
Did not know that, so that's a good fact right there. Key returning players, of course, the quarterback, JT Daniels. I know a lot of people aren't high on him. Me personally, I think he's gonna be a good quarterback. I like him. I mean, he's basically thrown in the fire last year. He wasn't ready to play last year, but I think this year he'll make a big step forward and show his potential, especially with the wide receivers he has. There's a lot of talent on that offense, so we'll see what happens.
People forget he graduated early. He was supposed to be a senior in high school last year, and he played. And I agree with him. I think he played pretty well for a senior in high school as a freshman in college football, and they've got a lot of weapons. So I think he'll take a good step forward this year.
Basically, going off that in terms of like weapons offensively, the wide receivers are pretty good. I mean, actually, I should say very good wide receivers. Probably the best wide receiver is Amon Ray, no, not Ray,
Amon-Ra St. Brown.
yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown, excuse me. And then the second wide receiver is Michael Pittman Jr. And then their other wide receiver, who's basically in the next to wide, Ty Vaughns. And then running back is Stephon Carr. And then the left tackle is Austin Jackson. And then the right guard is Andrew Voorhees. Defensively, they have quite a bit coming back on defense also. And a lot of these defensive names are hard to pronounce, so I'm just going to let you guys know right now. As you guys probably can tell, I'm not good at pronouncing names, so just cross your fingers and hopefully we can get through this, because this will be tough. The defensive lineman that's coming back is Jay Tafili, I believe is how you would say his name. Another defensive lineman coming back is his name is Brandon Pillai, and he's a defensive lineman. And then the defensive end is Christian Rector. He's supposed to be a very good player. And then a linebacker is 250 pounds, and he covers a lot of ground. He has a lot of NFL talent. Pillai Gayoti is, I believe, how you pronounce that name. Very complicated. And then another linebacker for them is John Houston Jr. And then they got a cornerback named Greg Johnson. Key player losses, they really don't have much offensively. Defensively, they did lose a leading tackler, linebacker, very good player, in Cameron Smith. And then they also lost a lot of secondary players, so they're thin in the secondary right now. And then they lost their outside linebacker who led them in sacks and tackles for loss last year, in Porter Gustin. Recruiting-wise, I mean, USC, they're going to recruit. They always have, always will. Even when they're having down years, they still are one of the better recruiting teams in the entire country. Actually, last year, their recruiting was only 20 in the country, so that can kind of tell you, who knows, maybe Clay Helton. I mean, this probably is his last stand if he can't if he can't at least win the Pac-12 South, I think he's gone. So we'll see what happens. So they've been number 8 in the country for the last 5 years in recruiting. And returning production is pretty sad. One of the worst in the entire country, 118. So we'll see how that goes this year. Offensively, they have number 96 in the country last year with 26.1 points per game. Defensively, they were number 59 in the country, giving up 27 points per game. Last year, they went 5-7 and 4-5 in the Pac-12 and did not make a bowl game. So, I mean, making a bowl game really isn't even that impressive in USC anyways. They expect championships, they expect Pac-12 championships, and they expect national championships. So this year, I have USC going 8-4, so I mean, for their standards, really isn't that good, but compared to what they did last year, it's definitely a step up for them. So looking at their schedule, they start the season against a Fresno State team that was very good last year, but lost basically their entire team, so that should be a cakewalk for USC at home. And then they get the Cardinal. The Cardinal comes in Stanford for week 2, which is a very interesting game. I think USC will win that game for the second one of the season. And then I'm really not sure how good BYU is supposed to be. But anytime a team has to start the season week 3 and go into BYU after they play Stanford, and the week after they got Utah at home,
it's hard for to play in front of a lot of white screaming Mormons.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna throw a bone out to BYU and say actually USC loses that game. So at that point they're 2-1, and then it gets really tricky. They get Utah at home, and then they get Washington on the road the week after. So that Utah game, in my opinion, that game's gonna decide who wins the Pac-12 South right there. I mean, if Utah wins that game, in my opinion, Pac-12 South's basically over at that point. I mean, might as well just give Utah a championship. So that game is very big, and really, I don't know where to go on that one right now. I'm still kind of deciding really who to take in that game, because if Clay Helton wants to save his job, he's going to win that football game. That's basically what it comes down to. If Clay Helton wants to save his job, he's going to win that game. So
they have a really hard 6 games to start off the season.
Their schedule it's something else basically. It's hard to predict because USC has a talent to be a 10-2 team, or they can go. They can slack off like they've done the last couple of years and become a 6-6, 7-5 type team. So I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt, and I say they will upset Utah on the road. But the following 2 weeks after that, it doesn't get any harder than that. They get Washington on the road, and then the week after they get their annual game against Notre Dame on the road. I think they'll lose both of those games also. I have them beating Arizona at home, beating Colorado on the road, and then losing to Oregon at home. And then I think they could lose to Arizona State, just depending on how that game goes. So let's go back on the schedule. I have them losing Notre Dame, Washington, BYU, and then yes, I believe they'll lose that Arizona State also, or Arizona State game, which will give them 4 losses. And then, well, no mind, I have them losing against Oregon. So I have them beating Arizona State, beating Cal, and then beating UCLA, which ends the season 8-4 for USC.
I have them 8-4 also. I have Fresno State, Stanford, BYU, Arizona, Colorado, Arizona State, Cal, and UCLA. Like he said, this team has 10-2 talent. Even better than that, I think they could be 11-1. But I don't think Clay Helton's a good coach. I think he would have been fired a long time ago if Sam Darnold didn't bail him out. Before Sam Darnold got there, he wasn't very good. Then he had that year-and-a-half stretch where Sam Darnold was there and he kind of saved him. Then after that, he's been not very good. So I think it was mostly Sam Darnold. I think he'll be fired. And I think Urban Meyer is going to be the coach next year at USC.
I like that. That's a good input right there. Okay, so final team is the defending Pac-12 South champions from last year, and that's the Utah Utes. Key returning players offensively, the quarterback, Tyler Huntley, he's back this year. And then they have one of the best running backs, not just in the Pac-12, but in the entire country, and Zach Moss. He only played 9 games last year due to injury, but in those 9 games he had 1,096 yards rushing, so he was very productive when he was in the game and basically a hard man to stop. The backup running back who could get a few carries this year, and he's actually a very talented running back also, is Devontae Henry Cole. And then the main wide receiver who caught 60 passes last year is Britton Covey, and he's back this year also. And then the tackle position, they have 2 main guys coming back on the offensive line. They both play tackle. One is Nick Ford, and the other is Darian Pali, I believe is how you say his name. Defensively, they have a decent amount of guys coming back, and Utah usually has a very good defense. Some of their key players are linebacker Francis Bernard, also another linebacker Devin Lloyd, and then safety, who's a very good safety, Julian Blackman. And then they have an NFL prospect type cornerback, and his name is Jalen Johnson. He's supposed to be very good this year again. Excuse me. And then they have a slot corner, because a lot of times they like to play five DBs when they play their nickel defense. And his name is Javelin Gudry, something like that. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, kind of complicated. Key player losses, not really much on offense. They basically, the main players that they had last year coming back. Defensively, they lost 2 guys. They lost a linebacker, Cody Barton, and then they lost another linebacker in Chase Henson. So they do need to replace a couple of the linebackers this year for a team that was very good defensively last year. Returning production is number 21 in the entire country. So for recruiting the last 5 years for school, I know they're in the Pac-12, but Utah still isn't a huge time school. They're 38 in the entire country for the last 5 years, so that's pretty good for Utah. Offensively last year, they were 76th in the entire country with 28.1 points per game, but defensively, they were a very great defensive team. They were 17th in the entire country defensively, giving up only 19.4 points per game. So if you watch any kind of like Utah games last year, them and Washington, their defense has really led the charge. The defense also had 15 interceptions last year and 6 fumble recoveries, so they're good at getting turnovers and basically, creating opportunities for their offense, which was kind of slacking last year. Their record last year, they went 9-5 overall, and they went 6-3 in the Pac-12. They ended up winning the Pac-12 South, and they lost to Washington in the Pac-12 championship.
And one of the most boring championship games ever.
Yeah, it was definitely a snooze fest. I'm pretty sure I fell asleep at halftime. But anyways, looking at their schedule, they also start the season on the road at BYU, just like USC. They actually have a game at BYU. I believe they will win that game, though. And then I have them beating Northern Illinois, beating Idaho State, and then I believe they will lose that game to USC, which I think will have a lot of implications on the Pac-12 South this year. And then they'll recover the following week against Washington State at home, win, of course, against Oregon State. They'll beat Arizona State the following week, Cal the following week. Now, this is the game. This is a huge game for Utah, especially if they lose to USC. They're going to need to win this game. It's on the road at Washington. And actually, I believe Utah will win this game. So that's a big game for them, and they'll come through. The following week, they get UCLA, and then they beat Arizona the following week, and then they get Colorado. So I believe they'll go 11-1. And even though they lose that game to USC, I believe USC will lose 2 games, at least 2 games in the Pac-12. So Utah, even though they lose the head-to-head matchup, will still win the Pac-12 South.
He's giving a little bit of preview, a little bit too much info. But I have Utah going 11-1. I think they beat everyone other than Washington. I think there's 3 really good teams in this conference, and then kind of the rest. USC has the talent to be the 4th really good team in this conference, but I just don't see it. So I'm have Utah, Washington, and Oregon all competing for the Pac-12, and like I said, I have Utah 11-1.
But going off that, there's always that team. There's always that one team you're not really expecting. Think about the Big Ten last year. Did really anyone think Northwestern was going to come out of the West? The West isn't that good to begin with, but everyone thought it was going to be Wisconsin. It was like, it's Wisconsin. They'll be in the Big Ten championship. So USC, with the talent they have, and they have a lot more talent than Northwestern, could definitely make noise in the Pac-12 this year.
The thing is, there's always a hot pick for playoff predictions every year and a hot pick for a conference. And Utah seems to be that hot pick. I fell into it. I don't think they're going to go 11-1. But half the time that doesn't pan out. Usually it's some team, like you said, that you don't see coming and they kind of emerge. And that could be USC. It could be someone else. It could be everyone sees Oregon and Washington, so I don't think it'll be them. It could be Stanford. Stanford could do that. But everyone else, other than those 5, I don't see a surprise.
Even though I said Arizona State's going 7-5, I started looking at that team more and more, and I kind of fell in love with that team, to be honest. I think Herman Edwards is a good coach, and having 5 seniors and an offensive line and basically the entire defense coming back. If they had Kenny Wilkins, if they still had their quarterback, I honestly would probably take them out of the Pac-12 South. So I think it's a very talented team.
I think Utah just returns too much. I think they're talented. They got a good coach in Kyle Whittingham. I think they're going to be a good team this year. Thanks for watching. That'll do it for the Pac-12. Hit the like button, subscribe down below. Stay tuned for our